Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Jim, for coming on in today for the Monday, May 11th Urban Forestry Board. We'll do on the roll call.
Chair Burke.
Here.
Vice Chair Kohler.
Here.
Board Member Curtis.
Here.
Board Member Tinsley.
Here.
Board Member Phelps.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Again, thank you for coming. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda for today's meeting.
I move we approve the agenda for today's meeting. I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Approval for today's meeting. Moving on to the third, the approval of the minutes for the March 9th regular meeting.
Sure, do you have any edits?
Motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 9th. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Electricity probably going there. Moving on to visitor communication.
There's none.
We do not have any. Moving on to number 5, board business, the Creekside campground inventory.
Well,
I can do a little bit of a kickoff. Yeah. I guess it was last fall. We approached Avery after some of the work you guys had done, for the Heritage Grove nomination, things like that. And kind of bouncing off some of my experience with the Forest Service doing hazard tree surveys. We had some of those wind events in the fall. I approached Jackson and Avery like, hey, do we have any sort of formal safety survey for some of our campground trees, given that we have folks more or less living underneath them for the better part of the year? So then I pinged Avery. We put together a little scope of work and then got him out there using tree plug to do, I would say not a basic survey, but really taking a good hard look at most of the trees, cataloging, inventorying, not only for camper safety, but also just the overall health of the stand in there. Mm-hmm. So Avery can take it from there.
So I guess, last fall we kind of poked around and you'll notice, you can kind of see on this inventory here, there's a bunch of white dots in this southwest corner. And that was what the inventory looked like before. And Dan Galecki had put in a lot of those points, but you can see when they were kind of points, but there was no information associated with that point, what kind of tree it was, or the DPH or anything.
He did have a report. Dan had a report for that years ago.
So what he had was a spreadsheet that had some GPS coordinates and some basic data that associated with that GPS coordinate, but that wasn't able to be transferred into here.
Oh, okay.
They were just able to take that GPS coordinate and drop.
I thought he had like I couldn't recall right. There was some type of a scale of fair for on tree health. That was also correlated to some of these trees. So
Well, maybe we can dig that out under review. I'd be interested in checking it out.
I would imagine when it happens, he's got to go back and find it in the minutes and the board meetings.
I have it on my computer,
Okay.
spreadsheet, but he had made the point to me that different people input the data.
Mm-hmm.
Over
And
time.
they were inconsistent in their approach and therefore the ability to sync up all the data in an intelligent way to use it in a quantifiable way
Yeah.
was very limited.
Okay.
But there are some interesting factoids in there by some trees.
Yeah, well, hopefully I can look through that and we can maybe add that to the thought process here. But what I was able to do was I went through the inventory that we had. I realized, okay, we have about 700 trees in there in the campground. And we looked for, I can kind of got the report in here. We went through, and like Casey mentioned, we wanted to just understand the health and the condition of the trees, and also that in relation to the people camping there,
Yeah.
what kind of risks we have. It's kind of important to know, like with the tree risk stuff right at the beginning, that's something that is always, if you have a tree, you have some tree risk. There's not like a way that you can completely eliminate all that risk, but we can be thoughtful and look for those most significant, issues. And of those issues, the ones that we discussed were listed on page 3. And so I looked for deadwood 2 inches and larger, big enough that if it fell and hit your head, it would hurt and maybe injure you. Codominant leaders, so double tops. Symptoms of pests, bark beetle damage, hanging branches that are broken off and hanging in the canopy, visible fruiting bodies like fungus and conchs, significant leans, cavities in the trunk, and then visible evidence of root damage. So those are the things we decided to kind of narrow it down to. That way you have like a clear picture. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. And it doesn't get too
Standardizes it.
Yeah.
You cover compaction around the roots,
That's a good example of something that is important and does affect tree health, but that we didn't take
Okay,
to that level.
just curious, okay.
Yeah.
'Cause, a lot of places they roped off or where these
Yeah.
big old trees are.
Yeah.
They've roped them off and put bark chips down and things because they were compacting the roots, and I was just curious.
Like the big tree at Pine State Park, I think they've done
Yeah.
that. And that's definitely a thing to consider for some of the trees we have maybe in the future if we notice they're having
Okay.
impacts from so there are a few trees that I didn't get where we really don't have a lot of activity in the campground, but 629 trees were inventoried. And I did a quick walk around looking for these conditions of concern. And then I took a few measurements of each tree. And, oops. And before we go into the findings, I can just kind of show you how the inventory worked. It's kind of handy how you can go through this data. So right now you can see they're color coded by species, mostly ponderosa pine in the blue, a little bit of juniper in the purple. But if I go to filter some of the data out, I can. It takes a little bit to figure this software out. There's just
Is this BIS?
This is called Tree Plotter, and it's the
Okay.
program that the state of Oregon paid for all the cities in Oregon to be able to utilize for the next 3 years. So it's kind of handy to go ahead and
It's
utilize it, get our
it's here.
information in there.
So we have layers also on this, and
I'm sure it's,
Yes.
geospatially.
So all the trees got a DBH, a general health ranking, height, and species. Beyond that, when I noticed that the tree would have one of these 6 conditions here, I added that into the inventory and I marked it as monitor this tree.
Oh, nice.
So,
Oh, that's so cool.
and then beyond that, close this one. And I can apply that filter, and now you'll only see the trees that had one of those conditions.
That need to be checked in on
Yeah.
specifically.
So then I took another lap through and checked out all the trees where I had indicated, and I kind of prioritized all of that work. And that was something I talked about with Casey. Is like, if we go through and look at 700 trees and identify all, look for every issue, it's going to be a really long list of stuff that you're not going to be able to do right away. But in a lot of programs, urban forestry programs, they kind of look to move towards a progressive pruning program, proactive pruning program, so that you're taking care of these things in advance rather than waiting until the tree falls and you've got an emergency job. You got to call somebody to get there right away. It's kind of expensive, and plus there's that risk to the people in the campground. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
What about the park across the creek or the park next to it? I see they're red.
Yes,
Is that the whole thing?
Creekside Park was included in the
That whole
campground.
thing, not
Yes.
just the campground, but the park itself.
Yes,
Okay,
as
that's
well.
Yeah, Creekside Campground is part of Creekside Park.
okay.
As a
All right,
broader.
got it.
So if I go in here now, I've added monitor this tree was the initial layer that got added. And then there is another one labeled maintenance priority level. So this software has a lot of capabilities, probably way more than you would ever use, but
Yeah.
I
Right.
do a lot. And so if I go in and I say, okay, I want to see only the level 5. These are the things that I identified as it would be really great to address these as soon as possible.
So
And
you denoted a specific number for the tree. Once you enter that it has a condition, a
Yes.
concern, and then it prompts you, what's the maintenance priority or what do we?
yeah,
call it?
there's kind of a separate tab, and we can walk through that if you want. I
Okay,
could show you.
So then, yeah, it's like a.
So all the
subcategory.
5, you could
Yeah.
bring up all the 5s.
And that's what I'll do here. So
Okay.
I'll apply, and it gets to a pretty small number of trees all of a sudden.
Yeah,
We just
okay.
have a few, and then you can look at one, and you can go to the details, and you can see a little bit about what you're asking about, Bridget. So in the tree information, this tree has 3 trunks. There's the EDHs of those trunks. The condition of the tree, and we'll
That's
get
great.
down to there was indication of pests and some serious decline, branches hanging in the tree, and then there's also some photos.
Great.
That identifies the reason why you can see that there's a broken top just kind of hanging there.
Mhm.
And that helps, I think, we've identified it, now we've got these 5 trees, and that's something I could send to Casey and say, okay, well, with your all's approval, we'll just resolve these things.
Would we have access to this program?
Yeah, everybody has access to it. There's different levels of access, so
Right.
to fully edit everything would probably be in,
You guys,
That's in
yeah,
case
I know,
of
just to look at.
but you can view it, and there's ways where maybe you could add on.
Okay.
So. there's
Questions
different
or
ways.
something.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because at some point, if we wanted to, I did all this work in the campground, but there's no reason that if volunteers or community members were interested in participating, that they couldn't do their own neighborhood.
Sure.
Or, a certain block and volunteer, hey, I'll inventory my own community, and that would be
Yeah.
super valuable. So, that's kind of the cool thing about this program, is it is accessible by anybody. So, yeah, that's one layer. Then you have the management needs tab here. You could open up rather than tree information, Richard, you're asking about, and I could look at that.
That's awesome. Very cool for like staff efficiency, being able to anticipate work and manage people's time. There's a lot you can do remotely, and then imagine too for knock on wood, insurance and liability. This is also a really awesome way to show that best level of care and intent. So yeah, it's great. Very cool.
So if you break it down, that first block of trees where I showed I think there's 129 trees in there that were labeled that had some condition of concern. However, a good portion of those were kind of either off the beaten path, or it was just kind of a technical, well, it has a 2-inch dead branch, it's pretty recent, it's probably not gonna fall off. So I labeled those all differently. In the low category, you can kind of see detailed here on page 5. The very low category is there's a condition of concern, but there's really very little likelihood that anybody's gonna have an issue with it, or the tree's kind of off the beaten path. There were 50 trees in the low category, which really not many people passing by, or the way the tree leans is not towards the direction that anybody would be. So really not anything that I would say we really need to get into right away. But there were 54 trees that I thought we should probably consider in the next year, maybe come together with a plan on how to address or kind of triage that work. I don't think that they were conditions that I would be worried about immediately, but they will be eventually. There were 11 trees rated as high level of concern. These are big dead branches over a campsite kind of thing, split tops near the playground, and stuff like that, where we probably want to put some thought and effort into that as soon as we could, just to make sure that we mitigate that as best we can. And then there were 5 trees that had, mostly it was hanging branches that were broken off and hanging in the canopy. There's one that had a failed top, and
Widowmaker, is that?
widowmaker, basically. Yeah, that's easy enough to just pull them down and let's just take care of that.
Right.
And then there's one tree that has a really long codominant stem with a very long bark inclusion, and it's right next to one of the RV spots. And if it was to fail, it would fail into the RV spot.
Yeah.
It just seems like a great tree to remove. It's not the best tree to have in the campground. So there's probably photos in here of that, but.
What do you think about, I mean, there's a lot of ways to evaluate a tree, but
Yeah.
but if you look at DBH and kind of generally account for some assumption around age and maturity, what do you think about this chart here?
Yeah, so these are all charts that you can pull up in this program that it builds for you, which is pretty cool. And yeah, that's a good question. So the size distribution of the ponderosas in Creekside, and if you look at these purple marks, those are recommendations, general urban forestry recommendations of what you might promote in your urban forest. You want to have a lot of young trees that you're planting. You know that most of those may not make it to maturity, especially in the urban environment. I think the average lifespan of an urban tree is something like 13 to 25 years. It's very
For
low.
all species? I mean, that's
Well,
like
the thing is that development and construction, you plant a tree,
plant it, you take it out.
10 years
25
later,
years.
you cut it down and put in a new thing. You know,
Yeah.
it's just happens a lot.
Sure.
Don't make it. So they kind of encourage, well, you want to be planting, you want to have a lot of young trees so that some make it to maturity. And the more trees that you have on the younger side, the less maintenance you're dealing with. When you have a lot of really older
Makes sense.
trees, which we do in the Creekside campground. We have a lot of big, nice trees, but it does increase the level of maintenance and care you have to provide.
Yeah, that makes sense then. That recommendation curve is sort of high and
Yeah.
then descends.
Yeah.
I would say that, yeah, more of a natural setting. I'm like, this is all right, you know?
Yeah.
But in an urban sense, it's a kind of a different desirability curve.
I think the campground is kind of unique too, in that it is an urban setting, but it's also being maintained in a pretty natural way. So
Yeah.
it's not quite, it's an urban forest, but it is, it's kind of a unique setting. It's
Yeah.
not street trees, it's not a city park, a
Yeah.
normal city park. It's a pretty unique setting. So,
Yeah, which is why the aesthetic is, I mean, it's
Yeah.
desirable.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And that's another way when you look at the composition overall, you would, in a lot of cases, people would say, well, you really want a little bit more diversity. And of course, we have mostly ponderosa pines, but that's really it more
That's what our
speaks to the
forest-
setting that we're in. That's
Yeah.
that's what our forest is made of. Now, do we want to plant all ponderosa pines every time we plant? Probably not, but that's just the makeup of the forest here. So. So then I had a little bit about the strategic management, how we might work through that list, and we could do that all together as time allows. I think that those, Casey, we had talked about maybe those first 5 things, bringing that up in this meeting, whether or not you all felt comfortable with moving forward with those work projects, basically removing hangers and then removing the one tree with large codominant stem.
You climb up and get rid of those, or do we hire someone?
I can do that, but I don't do that here in this.
Oh, okay, I know.
Just out there with a slingshot.
That would be our,
Yeah. We did bring one of them down.
yeah,
It's out there.
yeah, we got one that needs to be taken, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you bring that up, there's some too that I thought, hey, there's maybe some of those trees are so beautiful. And some of them are the ones that we want to incorporate into the heritage grove status. And maybe there's a way that like, through volunteering or group project, we could do something I wouldn't mind, or maybe other people, we could talk about that. Like getting that maintenance, like the kind of care that you need to provide, but it's expensive. But it's also something that I think arborists in our community would love to be a part of, whether or not they made money or not, like getting to climb and care for a beautiful tree like that. And, you know, it would be a cool thing. So there might be ways we could look at that, like a kind of a community approach to some of those trees. Some of it's just work that needs done and you gotta pay somebody, but there are some parts of it where I can imagine alternative like options, so.
Or like maybe not these higher end ones, but like a low and very low, like
Yeah.
having a volunteer reevaluate to say status is the same.
Sure.
It doesn't, because that
Sure.
seems like it could be kind of an objective, the way the program is set up, especially with the photos where you've identified conch or deadland.
Yeah.
You could say it's still there or that dead hanger fell out and anyway.
I should say too that I didn't take photos of every tree, so if you go through them, the ones that were 4 and 5
Okay.
that I thought,
That
hey,
makes sense.
somebody might want to peek at this and see, but taking a photo of everyone would add a lot of time to the whole
Yeah.
process. Here at the end there, I just have a little bit about there, you know, a lot of times when you're doing tree risk assessments and tree inventories, a site assessment is really valuable. We didn't really invest a lot of time into that in this part of the project, but Casey and Jackson had mentioned that this would be maybe an annual revisit, you know, of a few hours every year. We're not as big of an effort as we put in here, but you could come back in and you could add that kind of data, you know, like you were talking about soil compaction, soil composition, wind direction.
Right.
All those things are really important for the health of the
You know,
forest.
Rima Gibbet might be a person, she's just gung ho, you know, she's doing the Animal Crossing out
Yeah.
north of us or west of us. And she does it as part of her biology class, she does it as part of IEE. And I don't know what IEE is gonna look like next year, but they've done things like that. We've done things like that as projects.
Yeah.
We did it on the park in the middle of town, where we're green.
Village Green.
Yeah, Village Green. We did it with Cindy Glick, was the silver coach that helped us and went through and the kids identified things and wrote it all up. And once you have this data and then the pictures, then they can compare, you know, middle school kids could do it too. Just as easy. I was just thinking as a possibility, I could talk to Rima about that and she should be back next year, I think. I know Miss Spears leaving, so down to one person that was in that IEE ran.
That would be cool, and I think that's just one thing that I wanted to note in there. You know, there's a little bit of a limitation. There are some things that we might find that really could have been added, and they can continuously be added as time goes on.
Or the school could do it on their property.
Sure, I mean, and we've done that.
State
before.
sanctioned, yeah.
The trees on the high school and
Absolutely.
the old middle school and did this. And then, like I say, Cindy Glick took us out and we did all the trees in the village green and then we rated them and took it to city council and they took out so many and cleaned them up, you know, and it was just, you know, a presentation that kids could do. They felt empowered to do that, so.
Good skill set.
Yeah, but having this year, that's just a great database.
Yeah.
The kids could work from, and they probably know more than me how to use that. They had to teach me a lot of things, so.
And I'll turn this off, and you can see all the trees. Go ahead.
I have a question. Well, first of all, this is just fabulous. Avery, thank you for all your work
Yes,
and Casey
sure.
and Jax for coordinating for this. What a great tool to be able to use. And I'm wondering, is the height of the tree recorded in the database? Because it's not here, but maybe you're just pulling out
Yes.
certain
If I was to click a certain tree, you could go into the details and tree information and got tree height 90 feet there estimated. It says estimated. I used the laser rangefinder. I didn't take 3 measurements. You know, I took the quickest measurement and
But for each tree that you,
for each tree I did
Wow,
use
that's
the
a
laser
lot of work,
rangefinder.
yeah.
So it's a laser tree finder. How far out do you have to get?
It's a forestry rangefinder they call it.
Do you have to get out 100 feet or?
I just have to be able to see the base at where it goes.
Where
to
the base
ground,
is?
right at the root flare, and then I should.
And then it's top,
So I'm gonna
okay.
have a clear
It
vision.
makes the triangle.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
It was,
Let them have
it was
it.
tedious. I spent maybe
Yeah.
an hour or two with you out there and
Yeah.
doing all that by yourself, taking the height, doing
Mm-hmm.
the DBH, looking it up and down, pictures and everything. He's out there on a tiny little iPad trying to click these little dots. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was a big lift for me.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think I averaged what, 37
That's
trees an
impressive.
hour, something like roughly. So it took a while, but also there was a lot of data.
Yeah.
37 trees an hour.
Yeah.
That's quick.
That's good.
Not
But
to
it also gives you
pile
an
work.
idea of like the amount of time I had to really detail. So there's things, we got the roughest stuff and we get everything.
This is great.
Are you planning to do the rest of the city, the
whole
older
city.
part?
Well, that's something that I think that.
I'm just, I don't mean you have to do it.
Budget's coming up.
We'll give you till next week to get her done.
Well, you can look and you can see that a lot of the cities already use it.
I can see those green ones there, yeah.
There's definitely some that could be added, and I think that's a really cool thing to engage the community. Hey, pop out and do the trees in front of your house, or do your neighborhood, or you have, HOA, and you guys contribute. I think that would be a thing that I would love to help train people on, if people are interested, or if that's something that you all want to see.
I know kids would love to use that.
Yeah.
I told that one, Mr. Ranger.
Yeah, and you can add as much information as you have capacity to do. If you can't measure the DBH, if you can't do the height, but that's species, that's helpful. So the kind of action item of the deal on this last page here in the appendix, I have those trees that are rated level 4 and 5. Those that are 5 are at the top, and we were discussing having those visited by our contractor, contracted city arborist, the Arbor One. And then these remaining ones we might want to discuss at the next meeting. We have a little bit of time to talk about, but I do think in some cases there's a picnic bench with a large dead branch over it. It'd be good to just get those resolved. It's kind of a thing where we put the bench there and it's like, well, you kind of invite people to come sit and you should, but it's not one where I'm like, wow, that's falling any minute now, but it needs to be taken care of.
Casey, when you're out there, was there any something that our crews can take care of, or do we need to contract this out?
Some of it can be done with, a pole saw, or you can try and use a throw ball and line. But a couple of these trees, there's the one removal next to that RV site. And then a couple of those hanging branches are, like 80 feet. But you're just going to need to climb it and shake it loose. I think the one we're looking for maybe a little bit of a nod about is the RV site one, and then that broken over one that Avery just showed y'all a picture of, kind of more in the park area. That's just a broken kind of unsightly scraggly tree. Yeah.
Oh, so this is out of the reach of our bucket truck.
Yeah, I had Jackson out there and I was like, hey, I think our bucket can reach it.
Not even a boom lift.
Yeah.
That big.
And just due to the campground having people in it, we'd probably end up closing those campsites adjacent to that one removal, close it out in our reservation system, working with Julie who manages our campground, and then just have Arbor One get in there and get rid of it. We can take down trees on our crew, but I would trust Arbor One to do it more precisely and quickly.
So do you need our blessing or anything for these first trees?
For today's agenda, I don't believe we were looking for a motion.
Okay.
More of just a yes, we support type of thing.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
If the board feels like a co-dominant top in between two RV spots is a critical concern, I can move forward with scheduling that.
I think that falls into the critical area and safety.
Mhm.
There's that you all move forward with.
I'll pursue it.
I saw a couple of Facebook posts in the Greater Sisters area, and there were these 3 or 4 women talking about, I thought we were a tree city, USA, and we're cutting down all these trees. Why? Why are we cutting them down?
Mm-hmm.
What is the city doing? Why aren't they stopping this? And so I said, well, the city has control of its trees, but other people do on their property, right? If they take out a big tree, they have to get permission from.
We do have a private tree removal permit as well as a public tree removal permit for those subdivisions where our code outlines that you are responsible for that tree in front of your property. And so any kind of removal, public or private, has to go through some kind of permitting process.
That would be a neat thing to put a blurb out in the Nugget or something, especially if we're starting to trim up and knock down tops or whatever over the park. People are gonna say, what's,
I think that was pretty easy to justify once we have documentation that it's a credit.
right, and then just to say, we'll be removing hazardous trees, you know, a note from the city hall, we're gonna be working on the campground, and we'll be removing hazardous trees that have been identified by our, silviculturist or our arborist,
And I think a lot of that anxiety with tree cutting is kind of centered around development, which, you know, it's a process I'm not 100% familiar with, right? That's more kind of community development department. But obviously, you need to remove trees if you're going to be building on a property that has had trees growing on it since the dawn of time.
Yeah, it's the contrast, I think, too, like when the industrial park went in, it's like forested to
the
develop.
woodlands in there, and what happened with that, and people.
And our community development tracks that, there's replacement rates in our code. A 3-to-1, so every 3 you cut out, you have to replant with 1, and that's not counting street trees. Right? That's a whole other thing.
Okay.
So there's opportunities to replace trees. And I believe our community development department works with those developers trying to minimize removals as much as possible.
Well, I wouldn't measure that big tree, would you?
In
The big one over there in the woodlands.
Yeah, they put the sign by.
Yeah, got the sign on it. It's
Don't mean to read
16 feet around.
There you go.
So
16 feet or 16.1. And the big one on the corner
Thank you for this.
over here is 15
Oh, cool.
feet 1. It's smaller. And there's actually a bigger one in the park. Just to the right of the bridge going across,
Oh, I
there's
know.
another big tree. And it's like 1 inch bigger at breast height as the one across the street. I wouldn't got a tape, but I was curious, so.
Yeah, it's a fun.
Yeah, it is. It's neat to understand that. And so anyhow, and then with that one in the woodlands is 16 feet around.
Yeah.
Or 16 feet 1 inch, yeah. It's a big tree. So.
For anybody online, Chair Burke had to leave, transferred the meeting off to Vice Chair Holder. We'll be running the meeting for the crowd.
Okay. So is there any more discussion about these?
One,
Trees.
one other thing that I just wanted to add is that in some cases, there are trees that I recommended for advanced assessment. There are some pretty big trees in there, and some of them are very magnificent trees, but because they're old, they have big cavities. They have some significant, things that draw your attention, right? It's not to say the tree's unsafe, but in order to determine whether or not it is safe, there's like a process that we go through called advanced assessment. So like a formal tree risk assessment. And I do think that it's worth considering that for several trees in the campground. There's a cost associated with that, but I think that those trees also have a high value themselves. So
I think it's driving cars through those redwoods,
yeah, right. So there's a variety of different things. There's different trees that
Cavities,
need
you
different
think about
assessment.
animals, for birds, whatever kind of chipmunks, squirrels.
Yeah.
They nest in those cavities, and there's a trade-off there.
Yeah.
Is it going to harm the tree, or is it just beyond the life of the tree? It's going to put an
And
end.
there is a tree that I think is in pretty significant decline there. One of the trees that has lightning strike damage, which is really cool. It also happens to be in the campground, and there's this tough balance there. And it's also not the time of year to be pruning on ponderosas because it's beetle flight season. So there's a balance there where a lot of these level 4 trees are some level of pruning or advanced assessment is a recommendation. And putting that off towards the fall, I think, is a smart thing to do. But it'd be good to kind of like look through these in more detail with everybody.
Okay, well, maybe we can revisit this next month.
I'm open to that.
Okay. Because I'm all for an advanced assessment if you
Mhm.
deemed that one is called for.
How often would you do an advanced assessment on a tree like that? Is that a like biannual thing or?
Oh,
once a
how long would you
year,
have to repeat that?
Yeah, depends, I
Um,
guess, maybe on what they find.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the condition.
Okay.
Sometimes you may do an advanced assessment and find, oh, maybe you were anticipating there was some root decay and you don't find that.
Yeah,
Okay, that's good.
yeah,
Or you're wondering what the extent of construction damage was to this tree. So you find
That'd be
out
like-
by doing pneumatic excavation and you're like, oh,
yeah.
damage wasn't bad, and you kind of pull that under. If you have a large cavity in the tree, that may be something that you revisit on yearly or every other year, or to see how it's changing.
Mhm.
And you have to balance that versus the value the tree provides. There's like that you know, in some cases you have extremely valuable trees where it's worth it and you invest in it. In other cases you go, well,
Mhm.
maybe doing another advanced assessment. You know the tree's kind of declining and maybe it's just best for you.
Yeah.
So there is kind of a
Okay.
interesting balance there.
Makes sense.
And that's another thing about the whole inventory. It sounds like this would be redone a little bit cyclically, but something every 5 to 7 years, you know, you might go through and do a full
Have
revisit.
different sections of the park or town or something.
You could do that too. You could have one block, you know, of the
Right.
campground that you redid every year, and it would only take you a couple hours rather than doing the
Yeah,
whole thing.
trying
But
to
once
do
you
the
have all
whole
the
thing in
information- yeah.
a number of weeks.
No, I had a friend in college who was an AmeriCorps volunteer and he inventoried a city. That was his job.
Nice.
And then I did it for the state of Montana, but it was a course of 2 summers, and I forget how many cities were included, but it was a lot. But yeah, it doesn't need to be done in all one fell swoop.
Yeah.
You did it? You personally did it, or you
Mhm.
oversaw? First,
Well, it was maybe the best job ever.
Yeah,
It's so fun, just cutting trees all day,
yeah.
driving around Montana. Think of it.
Yeah, and that was a thought I had too, that even people on this board might want to do like a, you know, get together and do a neighborhood that's not inventory.
Yeah.
Or work with an HOA to, like, if folks on this board were really well trained in how to use tree plotter and had a couple tools, they could partner with an HOA or partner with the neighborhood and help them complete a little inventory of their neighborhood. You know, I think that'd be super valuable.
I think like to your point before is this is a way to show and you know Facebook people are just whatever they want to say.
Yeah,
they're
right.
just
They,
going up.
they're curious.
Yeah, but they don't know.
They don't.
So it's a
understand. They don't
real
know the rules.
it's a great tool to say, did you know that in the last however much time this many trees have been inventoried, and they can these software companies, they also can subscribe a value, and you can look at it in really intrinsic ways with like water conservation or heat conservation, shade. They can put a dollar value on it.
Right, right.
So you can talk about the value of an urban forestry in a lot of ways and quantify it so that people understand things a little bit better, and or at least have the confidence to know someone's paying attention. You're not the only one noticing that the canopy is changing, but what else aren't you seeing that we can help kind of narrate that experience? So
It'd be interesting to you know, have like the first grade classes, whatever, 3 or 4, have them adopt a tree.
Mhm.
And then they follow it all the way through
Oh.
till they graduate. And they check it every couple of years
Yeah.
and see how it's doing, and using a simpler qualifications, but they can follow it, you know, and then it gives them ownership of the community that they're in.
Yeah, I feel a connection to it.
Yeah, and then the teacher takes them out and they take a look at it in the fall, and then they take a look at it in the winter, and they take a look in the spring, or, you know, and then when they're in 3rd grade, they do it again,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, to add to Bridget's point, one of the other very valuable things you can understand by doing a tree inventory is you can understand where you don't have trees. And sometimes a good argument for, okay, well, trees come down in the urban environment very often. It's something that happens with development, trees die. But the way to offset that is to be consistent with planting trees as well, like we were talking about with that graph, you know, to have those younger trees coming up.
Yeah.
When you do an inventory, if you can identify, hey, some neighborhoods really don't have very good coverage here. And that can really help you prioritize your Arbor Day events and your planting events in the future to say, let's plant here. You know, Creekside has tons of trees, but
Right.
out in this neighborhood, we don't, and now we know, and we can help understand where we need to put those efforts in, or where has lost a lot of trees for the last 10 years. Let's make a planting effort there. So that would be
Good question. Okay. Is there anything else on this topic? Tree plotter? Emily, do you have any comments on the tree plotter discussion? Okay.
Like that wind map on here.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Which way the wind comes from?
Staff updates, do you have any additional?
So thank you for those of you who attended Arbor Day. That was a lot of fun. And thanks to SKRD for volunteering their space for some Arbor Day plantings. We still have maybe 24 of those ponderosa saplings. They're still hanging out at our nursery. They've survived for years up there, just kind of hanging out. So I've got a lot of hopes for them that they'll take off pretty well.
Are they all in the rectangular?
They're in the
Like sleeve
rectangular,
holders?
the rectangular sleeves inside of larger containers,
So
so
they're,
that they can get hit by irrigation stay upright.
okay.
Do we need to look into? Are they okay in those sleeves right now?
I think it's
No.
time, if they're the ones that we got 2 or 3
Yes.
years ago, Project Ponderosa would be repotting them
Mhm.
by now.
Into what's
A
that
bigger-
container? Just bigger.
Well, make sure it's deeper,
Mhm.
because that's so I don't know if 2 gallons would suffice, maybe a 5-gallon.
This year was a great year for ponderosa pine babies.
Yeah, I wonder.
They're just everywhere. All over, anywhere where it's wet and there's a crack they can fall into or something. There's lots
And
of
maybe
them.
I wonder what containers they order typically, or what they up to at Project Ponderosa.
They have all different kinds,
Okay.
but their big discovery was the sleeve ones. Because they really are great for getting them started. But they would lament that some would kind of escape being noticed and stay in those pots too long.
Yeah.
Then you've got to trim them off, the roots off the side and the bottom, and I frankly don't know how soon it gets past the point of no return. But they would just keep repotting them up in very standard size pots. There was no special pots that we used after that.
Most of those transplants are about that tall, you know. They're a couple of feet, foot and a half. When you see them rebroaden out in the forestry areas, those trees they put in are about a foot and a half to 2 feet tall. And, you know, they're bare root, they've just taken them out, put them in their satchels and then take them out, stick them in the ground. That's probably an ideal height or age to replant those trees.
Yeah.
Pretty
And
much
if they
what
get
that's pretty
moved
much what they're already at. That
They're already
But,
past that. Yeah, I've got a couple in my yard.
Do you have other?
So we have done a few replantings of street trees that have failed over the years, most notably at the intersection of South Pine and West Washington. There's a little shopping center there. That's kind of part of our downtown street tree maintenance area. We did plant 2 lindens
Nice.
there from our nursery stock. We've been trying to get service berries to stay in there, and they just keep dying.
I've
So
tried
we're
to grow
trying
those things.
Don't the Jerry eat the service berries?
I'm not sure. But we tend to have good luck with service berries. But for some reason right there, no, they get irrigated. But we got some nice healthy lindens in there.
Are the trees, is there a watering plan for the trees that we planted on Arbor Day, or just a fingers crossed?
I have an update on that.
Oh, okay.
Right before this meeting, I went out there and, cause I had been there before and they were dry. So, 2 are getting like, I think somehow, just cause they're in the shade and close enough to the irrigation for the lawn, they're getting some water here too. The rest of them were bone dry. So Jared happened to come out with Sisters Park and Rec when I was out there. And I said, do you have a plan for these trees? And they do have a plan. They ordered, I guess they're called donuts or something. Those are
Yeah.
great little things to go around each tree, but they haven't come yet. And they were supposed to be there last week and they haven't been watered. So I ever so gently pushed to get them watered now because it's been so warm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and one is already turning that sickly kind of yellow hue. But the rest of them look like they're hanging in.
Okay.
Very well planted, everybody who participated, because we put mulch on top.
Yeah.
And that's really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. So he said, he'll talk to his crew. I said, Sisters has this nifty little watering thing on the back of their truck. Or maybe you'll be getting a
I'll
call.
reach out to Jared after this and see if they haven't gotten those already, if we need to go out there tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be nice. It's so nice to drive around the roundabout and on that
beautiful.
area and
Yeah.
see all the new trees and the old ones that were planted
Terrific. Yeah,
previously.
did really well. Go figure.
That's been so
Irrigation.
hot. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
they have lots of- it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
was that?
The
Yeah.
landscaping's nice, the tree varieties are really beautiful.
Yeah, it's nice to have some different. And then I had a question, I don't know, who to address it to. The big barrels that were around the big giant grandpa tree are gone. Are they coming back or is there another plan?
We had to remove those for the landscape we're working on that roundabout project.
Hmm.
The barrels are still there, but they're against the fence. I kind of got the impression they might come back. Get treated. Yeah, they were still right there.
They were only on the tree for select number of months. We weren't there for very long.
I will look into that.
Okay.
Did irrigation go in that would water the tree?
Oh, there you go.
In that
Believe
process?
I recall, it's been a while since I looked at those plans. I believe there was some nearby irrigation, but not too much where it would disturb roots nearby.
Okay.
But then it would be getting some kind of water irrigation.
How much water does a tree like that need?
That's a really good question. I thought about that quite a bit and it's hard for me to say. I do think that you probably couldn't, being that that tree is kind of on the eastern boundary of Ponderosa Pines in general. If you notice, like you leave town to the east, you pretty quickly.
They're gone. Yeah.
So those trees I don't think we'd have a problem with overwatering, is what I would say. I think you could water, especially throughout the summer with the dry winter we had this year. I would anticipate you could give the tree quite a bit of water. It has root damage from construction. I don't see a lot of negative impacts happening from watering it. We have sandy soil that drains well, so I think we could, fill those barrels.
I
I
will
love
say
that tree.
it was easier to fill those barrels when landscaping wasn't there. And when
Oh, I see,
it's
the dry.
busy. Yeah, because we would have our backer truck, which has large tanks of water.
Yeah.
Hop the curb, a little bit of a distance away from the root zone, and then long hose fill up those barrels. It's a little bit more difficult now, but we'll do some brainstorming, see what we can do.
Or maybe the existing irrigation.
And yeah, the existing irrigation, maybe we can plumb something in that just dumps a lot of water on it.
I would say like one recommendation that I do know is per inch in diameter that a tree is how many gallons you might give it a week. So if you have a 1 inch tree, you might give it 10 gallons a week in an establishment period. That's something that they do have a really well established tree like that might not need, it's a 60-inch tree, you might not get 600 gallons of water a week. That would be a little much. It probably gets a lot of the water it needs, just from its.
It should get some from the runoff from the road there, didn't it?
Yeah, and the adjacent landscaping, if it's.
Yeah, I wonder
Recreation center.
if it's.
Yeah.
I'm
Go under
sure
the
it
lawn.
does, yeah, well, probably the
Branches.
roots can reach out to the height, equivalent to the height of the tree.
Oh.
That was like
Trees are
a question
smart.
I
So
had.
maybe that's-
Not the width of the limbs, but farther, if you,
Yeah, it can be the height of the tree or time at 1.5, depending on species. I don't know exactly about Ponderosa.
for Ponderosa,
Yeah.
those junipers,
Sure,
they only go about a mile
yeah.
each direction,
So I bet it's getting some water, but like I would just say.
It's got her hand up.
Oh, yeah, maybe Emily has a good idea.
Emily, would you like to
She's
say
at the
something?
library, so she's got.
Oh, This has been fascinating. I do have to leave in 10 minutes. Is there any other board business? Sorry to be like
We're wrapping up.
pretty
I think we'll be done.
direct.
I just wanted to say that, update on the Heritage Grove application with the state of Oregon. I have been remiss, we've spent a lot of hours on it, lots of hours. And, I personally have, I guess, let other things have a priority. There's just one more thing to do, or let's put it this way. The ball's in our court to write a draft of a 70-word summary, because in general, they've accepted the idea that after lots of running around and talking about various aspects, which was all fascinating, about what you put on a plaque and what deserves to be a heritage grove. What you put on the plaque, it turns out they really don't want to hear about indigenous trails. Even though that's where we started, would you please talk more about how that all works? So only in generalities will we mention the history of the grove, but just need to do it, so.
70 words is pretty short.
Yes. And you're welcome, anybody who wants to chime in, it's a Google Doc. Let me know. That's it, that's all I have.
You could probably get AI to give you those 70 words.
Oh, you're right, Cheryl. Yeah, I'll feed it all the data.
Make up some fake Indian name and then put that in there.
Oh, no, they don't like that.
We gotta go forward. We
I
can't
know,
go back.
I know.
Cheryl, do you have any city council liaison comments?
I do not. I was just sitting here trying to think of anything that's related, back to trees. And we don't have anything currently on our plate on council.
Okay.
I love the tree plotter software. This is so cool.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about other places. We've got the new Gateway Park, for example, a lot of people going in and out with the new dog park there. That will be a lot of people sitting there under the trees. It might be another risk area that we would want to just inspect those trees, make sure there's no problems there, because the city does avoid liability as much as possible.
Sure.
But this is great. This is
Especially when it's newer construction, because that opportunity to see if there was any damage.
yeah.
It's a good time to monitor.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything else? Yes?
Well, go ahead.
Counselor, I am still waiting to hear back from Tree Plotter on how much it would cost for the city to, they forgot about me, but I reminded them I existed. So they're gonna get back to me. But from what I heard from OEF, they have no intention of letting this go unfunded. So once those grant funds end, they are gonna look at other alternatives.
Okay.
For making it available to all cities?
Okay,
Oh,
and
nice.
just keep it going. Because when you zoom out, the number of cities that are, that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Very cool. And do appreciate everything the city did towards Arbor Day.
Yeah.
It was a nice gathering, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And some people now have been there multiple times. So it's sweet to see the kids. Yeah.
Always fun.
All
I
right.
had a question about the woodland. Does anybody know how many trees they cut down and how many they planted? You said there was, they had to plant 3 for every one, or is there any kind of record ever kept?
The community development department tracks that.
Okay,
So Sarah or Scott.
I can tell you there was a really good inventory down in the beginning.
okay.
Of every tree that was on the site.
I know the Forest Service had it, and because they were going to sell it. I know they're going to make the new ranger station out there, right? And then that got canceled, and then they decided to sell it.
Like Avery said, the developer did a good job IDing everything. There's a little metal ID tag on every tree in there.
Good.
And some time ago, I saw the report when they were planning the subdivision, color coding it based on, will remain, will need to be removed, try to save. So they did a good job.
Okay, good. Something people would ask.
I know for street trees, it's a one street tree every 35 feet
Okay.
at the least. So you can plant more densely, but you can't go less dense than one tree every 35 feet. So it should give you kind of reference of the street tree requirements. And that does not count towards the actual replacements for what they cut down.
I guess that's an interesting thing as a potential exercise of tree fodder is just adding in new trees.
It's typical with the newer subdivisions like Woodlands
Sure.
and the Mackenzie Meadow Village because they were allowed to plant their street trees on the private property because they were getting more dense. There wasn't planting strips instead of stormwater swales. Those wouldn't show up on something like tree plotter.
But like for Arbor Day, when we do that, just taking the time to drop in and be kind of interesting to, that's maybe superfluous, but
No,
it would
it's
be
a really-
fun to add like when it was planted, you can kind of
Yeah.
see success rates or.
It's
things
a
like
really
that.
good time to incorporate things into the inventory is like as soon as that development has completed is a great time to incorporate that into your tree inventory. I think this is an easy time to know, hey, let's get that in there in the next 6 months. It's an easy time because after time goes on and you go, oh yeah, well, nobody ever inventoried that neighborhood or that neighborhood. And you can always work back in, but if you're getting everything as you grow, I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, something maybe the community planning department can put on the developers is like something to consider as part of growing a city like Sisters is tracking those. Not that it would be a responsibility of the city, but a responsibility of the planner to hire somebody to give an inventory or Avery or I don't know, just something to consider. Yeah, good point. A lot of data.
Anything else? Anybody? Good. All right, this meeting is adjourned as 3:56 PM on Monday, May 11th. Thank you.
Monday, May 11th.
Thanks, everyone.